The NFL draft was pretty weird, and I mean that in the fact that we had 2 running backs go in the top 12 despite years and years of evidence saying that we shouldn't even take them in the first round at all. But one of those running back prospects happens to be Bijan Robinson, who many people view as a generational prospect at the position. And when the Falcons drafted Bijan, I went out looking for ways that he could be used because I knew the Falcons a couple years ago were using Cordarrelle Patterson in very interesting ways, and I thought, hey, maybe Bijan can be used in a similar capacity. But honestly, the more that I was looking into the Falcons offense, I think that this might be one of the most underrated offenses in the entire NFL. And that honestly stems from 3 main points. Number 1, the opportunities for a player like Bijan Robinson. Number 2, the opportunities for a player like Kyle Pitts, who is a freak that they drafted just a couple of years ago and a lot of people really forgot about. And number 3, their versatility among their entire offense and ability to dictate what personnel the defense comes out in. It is when you combine those 3 elements that I think you have the potential to see a very unique and potentially special offense this year for the Atlanta Falcons. So let's start out with number 1 and Bijan Robinson. When I first looked for how Bijan Robinson could be used in this Falcons offense, I looked at somebody who's actively on the Falcons roster in Cordarrelle Patterson and his performance in 2021. He was lined up pretty much everywhere, and Arthur Smith used him as a chess piece in a way that we really haven't seen across the NFL since. And when I looked at the stats, I found a very interesting chart from Football Outsiders that really paints a picture of how many different alignments Cordarrelle Patterson had and how Atlanta worked to get him the ball in as many different ways as possible. If you look at this chart, it actually shows that Cordarrelle Patterson led the league, every single running back in the league, in target percentage out wide. 37.7% of his targets came out wide, which was a league high by about 17%. And despite being listed as a running back, Cordarrelle Patterson actually had the lowest percentage of targets out of the backfield for running backs. Only 29% of his targets came out of the backfield, while 33.3% came in the slot. This made his splits among the most even in the league. And what this pretty much shows is that Arthur Smith, although we all know him as a run-first offensive coordinator, is willing to do a lot of unique things in the passing game when it comes to trying to get his weapons the ball. I mean, Cordarrelle Patterson had among the most unique and even target share when it came to, in the slot, in the backfield, and out wide. And I think that that's something we could see for Bijan, especially given how highly touted he was as a receiver. And that raises the question, what were the thoughts on Bijan Robinson coming out as a receiver? And I think there's no better place to look than with his head coach, who had an interview with Peter King and said that he thinks Bijan Robinson could be a slot receiver in the NFL. Steve Sarkisian came out and said that Bijan Robinson had the best hands on the entire Texas team last year, which includes guys like Xavier Worthy, who very well could be first-round picks next year. And that falls right in line with the evaluations on Bijan Robinson, where a lot of people saw that he wasn't just a special runner, but a special receiver as well. This is somebody who is going to be getting a lot of targets early and could be dominant in this Falcons offense. But we all knew how special Bijan Robinson was. He is a unicorn. But the thing that makes Atlanta really interesting is the fact that they have 2 unicorns, in the second one being Kyle Pitts. This is somebody who I think could also be in for a huge season, especially coming back from injury and hopefully being fully healthy. Arthur Smith himself admitted that Pitts played a little banged up throughout the season and was not 100%. He missed 7 games and ultimately got knee surgery on November 30th, causing him to miss the remainder of the season. And Arthur Smith also said that he, quote, couldn't be more excited about Kyle and his future, so I think that he could be in for a big season, and a large portion of that is because of his versatility. Like I said earlier, Kyle Pitts is a unicorn. This is somebody who can line up just about anywhere on the field, and when he came in at the combine at 6'6", 245, people knew that whatever team drafted him was going to put him at all different spots. And what's going to increase his versatility is the fact that Atlanta went out and traded for Jonnu Smith, somebody who can play an F tight end, move tight end kind of role and allow Pitts to have more reps as an outside receiver, which means more potential targets. This should take away a lot of the blocking responsibility that Kyle Pitts had last year and hopefully show him some more targets from better quarterback play. Just looking at the way Atlanta's QBs played last year, Kyle Pitts saw 58 targets prior to his injury, and according to PFF, 33 were deemed uncatchable, which makes 59% of his targets unable to be caught, which was the highest percentage in the entire NFL among players with at least 50 targets. We don't know how good Desmond Ridder is going to be this season, but I think it's a safe bet that more of his passes to Kyle Pitts will be catchable than what Mariota was throwing last year. But regardless of what you potentially think of Desmond Ridder, I think it's time to move on to my third point, and that's Atlanta's ability to dictate personnel and utilize their versatility to attack the personnel that comes out onto the field. But if we're going to understand that, I think it's first important that we understand this team's offensive identity, which I don't think is going to change very much from last year. This is a team that was first in rushing attempts and third in rushing yards. They went all out on pounding the rock. And defenses have and will continue to react to that. They're going to sell out to stop the run. They're going to bring linebackers up, and they're going to bring heavier defensive sets onto the field, which could create great mismatches for Atlanta. And what makes Atlanta really unique is that some of their best run personnel is also the same as some of their best pass personnel. Let me list you some of the freaks on this roster along with their heights and weights. Kyle Pitts is 6'6", 246. Jonnu Smith, 6'3", 248. Drake London at 6'4", 213. Bijan Robinson at 5'11", 215, and Mac Hollins at 6'4", 221. All of these players are versatile in where you can line them up. Mac Hollins played tight end. We know about Bijan. Drake London can play inside and out. Jonnu Smith can play all over the place, and we already talked about Kyle Pitts. These dudes are going to dictate heavier personnel when they come out onto the field. You're going to be looking at them and thinking, hey, they're going to run the ball, and Atlanta more times than not is going to run the ball. But it's about those times when they call play action and what they can do off of it. If teams are selling out like I expect, there's going to be a lot of mismatches and linebacker displacement, allowing for play action to be a lot easier for Ridder. If the teams go light, continue to run the ball. And if they go heavy, you can run quick passes to guys like Drake London, Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts, or Mac Hollins. But you can also find similar mismatches in play action and attack holes versus zone coverage. This is a team that is built to win in the play action game, on top of the fact that they were already one of the best rushing teams in all of football. And that's what makes them really exciting. They have all these different athletic freaks. They brought in Bijan Robinson on top of already having one of the best rushing attacks in all of football, and are slowly falling into the vision of what Arthur Smith wants this team to be. He wants them to be multiple, and he wants them to be able to dictate defensive personnel because he knows that he can eat that alive with his play calling. I think that the Falcons are in for a really exciting offensive season. They might not necessarily be a contender, but they're a team that I think could be very fun to watch this upcoming season, and I definitely will be keeping an eye out during Falcons games.